noise!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. Brought to you by funkandstuff.net, this is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott DR GX Goldfine, musicologist, creative arts journalist, and multimedia pro. Whether you're watching the video version of this show or the audio-only podcast version, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in this show. If you enjoy this programming, there are several ways to help support Truth and Rhythm, as well as contribute to further enhancements and expansion, plus get some sweet perks and rewards in the process. First, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Second, join Truth and Rhythm's new membership program through Patreon, which features 3 tiers for truth believers, truth seekers, and truth crusaders. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, which is loaded with awesome content, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. Sponsorship opportunities are available as well. Contact me directly at scottg@funkandstuff.net. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm. I'm thrilled to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership Doug Wimbish, a renowned bass player and composer who has created some of his best-known music with Sugar Hill Records, the band Tackhead, and Living Colour. Gifted with the skill and sensibility to traverse a multitude of musical genres, he has excelled in rock, funk, hip-hop, industrial, R&B, fusion, and pop contexts. In addition to releasing adventurous solo works, his contributions have been extended to Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, Little Steven, Afrika Bambaataa, Melba Moore, Freddie Jackson, Peter Wolf, Billy Idol, Joe Satriani, Madonna, Al Green, Carly Simon, Seal, Annie Lennox, Michael Bolton, and George Clinton. Wow, that's some range. Doug, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you. Thank you for joining the show.
Pleasure to be here.
And where is here? Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm in Hartford, Connecticut.
And a little bit cold right now, I'm guessing.
A little bit. We had a nor'easter blow through here last night and today, so it's always fun when it snows and digging the car out, watching the kids play in the snow. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh boy, yeah. Well, I told you I'm in Charlotte now, but I was, born and raised in L.A. When I came out here and I saw that white stuff. My friends up in the Northeast thought it was funny that I didn't own a snow shovel. So,
did you borrow one of their shovels?
Yeah, well, I have my own now, but yeah, okay. That was a rude awakening for sure.
Okay.
So, but you're from there originally, right?
I'm originally from Bloomfield, the next town over.
Okay.
Bloomfield, Connecticut. Yep.
Yeah. And you got into music when you were a teenager, right? How did that develop?
As a young kid, I was listening to a lot of music. I have an older brother and sister, and I would listen to what they were listening to. Eventually, I took a shining to the guitar. And that led to me picking up a bass And that was around 19, I was about 13 years old when I first started to tinker around with instruments. And so I played bass and guitar pretty much at the same time. But I gravitated towards bass, and because the way I was able to learn at the time was through different musicians that were within my hometown or within the area. So a lot of them were guitar players. So I found it easier to take lessons with the guitar player, and he would teach me songs, and so I'd learn some of the guitar chords, and then I would play bass at the same time. Then I found that there was a lot of competition with a lot of different guitar players, at the time. So I was friends with pretty much everybody. I was just trying to get as much information as possible. But that led to me really focusing on the bass when I was in high school. And by the time I graduated, I had already kind of started working with different people, one of which was Jackie McLean's Artist Collective. It was an organization that he had. There's a lot of musicians there, and I was able to take some lessons. And I met Skip McDonald there, who's my mentor, and we're still working together. We're still working with each other today. But it was Skip that really helped excel my skill set at the time, and the late great Harold Sargent, and they took me under their wings, and then I started playing with some elders. So it was 4 years from 1970 to 74 was extremely exciting, and a lot of things excelled. I was in high school, absorbing all the different information of what's going on. But then again, I was able to hang out with my brother and sister's friends who were older than me, and kind of like just pick up those frequencies. And once when you're that young, you take it all in. So I was fortunate to be around the frequencies and take it all in.
So did that foundation of guitar, and also, getting mentored by someone like Skip, what did that imbibe you with to take it forward, do you think?
Well, Skip McDonald is just an amazing artist, but first, he's just an amazing person. And his personality is what really made me comfortable to be able to take on all the different things that I was seeing at the time, because I was quite young. And when I met Skip, he was 7 years my senior, and so I got involved with a bunch of elders, and Skip was that person that was able to not just translate notes, but frequencies, and to understand how to prepare for the different frequencies and notes that you have to endure to be able to move forward in your quest for being a musician. But also, as a young adult, I was still growing and developing. So Skip's patience and calm and skill set was, I was just drawn into it. So we're talking 1973, 1974. And it was a lot of things were going on at that time, beautiful things. But I met Skip teaching bass at the Artist Collective. And lo and behold, he's a guitar player, but he's so talented. When I met him, he was just happened to be at the Artist Collective as well, and found a way to, he was taking saxophone lessons there. And even though he's a guitar player, and the way for him to play sax and take the lessons for free was to teach. So what do you want to teach? Well, I'll teach bass. So I just happened to meet him at the right time. And that's just the sign of a true champagne. But with his guidance and with Harold Sargent's guidance, a drummer, both from Ohio, both elders. It really gave me they gave me a wealth of knowledge of what songs to listen, what music to listen to, how to hold the foundation down as a bass player when you have that responsibility, and you're playing with these elders that are just amazing musicians. So, but again, it was Skip that was that calm, that Yoda, that person that was always he made the decisions when everybody else is freaking out. It would be Skip that would, Skip, what do you think? Well, first everybody needs to calm down, and then he had that kind of vibe. So real true Virgo, and so having a person like that is everything. He's from Dayton, Ohio. He grew up with the Ohio Players. He grew up around that whole scene, and I was just fortunate to be able to meet him and Harold and Otha Stokes, another the saxophone player in wood, brass, and steel, and these Ohio natives were able to really help shape my whole frequency. Because it's not just about, it's not just about how you play. It's also about how you perform. It's where your mind is at. It's how to endure the challenges that come up. And also and with them, I found myself in uncomfortable situations where I had to really dig deep to figure out how to produce the sounds that were needed quickly without any, just like on the spot. And that's how you learn. Some things you can rehearse, some things it's like, nope, here's what we're going to do. All right, forget what you just did. This is what we're going to do right now. You got to pull it all together and focus. And so Skip was the one that could give me some guidance. No, Doug, do this. What about this note? And then also the keyboard player, Hubert Powell, the wood, brass, and steel nucleus jazz organ player. Between the group, I had a wealth of information for note selection. So it's, but at the hub of it all, Skip.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You were fortunate indeed, it sounds like, to make his acquaintance at that time. Who were some of your early bass idols or heroes or influences? I mean, the usual suspects, or were there some others that we might not think of?
Probably some that you might not think of or know. My heroes were local bass players that were playing in the area. And those are always the unsung heroes. It's the ones you don't know that are the ones that are most influential. At least to me, they were. So the late great Gary Williams, a bassist that was from my hometown, Bloomfield. Another bass player, Beanie McClooney. He died very young. He's very progressive, very deep into Miles Davis and John Coltrane and Hendrix, and he had a very diverse palette. So they were my hometown heroes. And then also my mother's from the Bahamas. I would go there, spend summer vacations in Nassau, and the bands that were down there were just like, I mean, they played all the time. They're playing. They're probably still playing right now, but down there it was a different frequency because I'm also taking in the calypso frequencies and the junk canoe frequencies of what's going on from the Bahamas, and watching musicians reenact records and songs that sound just like the record. So you check out these bands, and they're so used to playing, basically becoming a live jukebox. Just having knowing hundreds of songs and knowing songs from an English catalog as well as a native Bahamian catalog, as well as an American catalog. So it was a diverse vibe, and the guys could play their butts off. Great guitar players, great musicians, and also the first disco hi-hat I ever heard was in the Bahamas, playing a lot of the Junk Canoe and Calypso vibes. So bass players, great bass players down there. The beginning of the end, Funky Nassau is one of the bands that they were legends there, the Munnings and stuff. And so, and also Al Coley, bassist that actually ended up starting Compass Point with Chris Blackwell in the Bahamas, a recording studio. So it was all these different heroes that were local that I would see. And but then back to the root of it, when I was coming up, there would a hero was somebody like Jermaine Jackson, because he's in the Jackson 5, but more rooted to like folks that I was listening to was Larry Graham, Sly and the Family Stone, Kool and the Gang, Robert Kool Bell, the bassists that were with Carlos Santana at the time, and also obviously Billy Cox, Bootsy Collins, all of James Brown's bass players, obviously the king of them all, James Jamerson. So and then I was listening to a lot of jazz at the time. The Impulse label was out, so my brother had all the records, and listening to Miles and Pharoah Sanders, John Coltrane, Chico Hamilton, the Fania All Stars. So again, it was like this take it all in kind of vibe. But then also was the reggae artists, Family Man, Bob Marley's bassist, and then I had the opportunity to actually meet Jocko when I was young. That was a real beautiful thing. So Stanley, Jocko, Bootsy, John Entwistle. I like bass players that were like, what's that? What's that sound? Why did you could hear the notes that they played, and you could identify the person by the frequencies. And that's Stanley Clarke. Oh, that's Jaco Pastorius. So that's Bootsy, Larry, and a note would create one name, a first name. So yeah, I was a kid. I took everything in. Paul Jackson, great bass player, but also listening to, and I got to give it up, Chuck Rainey, stunningly great bass player. And I grew up I think was that kind of golden era, 60s and 70s, where it was a lot of great rock players, funk players, blues players, Willie Dixon, jazz players. And so it was just like that. It's just FM radio and stereo was where my head was buried between the speakers. But,
yeah. And Parliament Funkadelic played some influence too, right? In that those early recordings you did, correct?
Oh yeah. When I first heard that first Funkadelic record, 1970, Mommy, What's a Funkadelic? It was, I was a freshman in high school. That was like 1970 when that came out. And it came out right after Jimmy passed. So that was it was like, losing Jimmy was a big thing for a lot of folks. And as a kid, it was really, I was a huge Hendrix. I still am a huge Hendrix fan. So when Jimmy passed, and then George released the first Funkadelic record, that was like, oh, okay, there's some freaky stuff going on here. There's a lot of cussing going on the record, so I couldn't play the records too loud in my house, so my parents would, what's that noise? And all that cussing going on. But yes, that was an awakening for me. Because George came with it was like the news with a beat. He's kind of giving you all this information. But the band, Eddie Hazel, Billy Bass Nelson, Bernie Worrell, Tiki Fullwood, Tall Ross, wow. And when I was listening to that first album, it must have just been on heavy rotation. It was just like, wow, I want to play that. It just was. It had all the elements because you heard some of Jimmy in there. It had the funk. It had the rock element. It was groovy. It was freaky. It was psychedelic, and at the same time, it was very challenging at that time because as a, the '70s, soul was powerful at that time. And funk was there, but people weren't really. Black folk wasn't necessarily accepting black bands playing like George Clinton playing some of that, or even Jimmy, so to say. So it was a bit of a kind of awakening in a sense, for some. But George really brought it home, in my opinion. What he did with that first record was open up the minds. A lot of folks weren't hip to it. Some were. And then, boom, as America Eats Its Young, or and then Funkadelic starts to come out. And now we're in 1974. He had found a way, George had found that right label, right support, right groove, right way to start, dispersing different artists to produce the sound that he wanted. So George just knocked it out the box. And so he's a huge influence. He was huge and still is a huge influence.
Yeah, and you've named so many great talents, and you ended up, you were a fan, and then you ended up playing with and certainly meeting so many of the people that you mentioned later on. That must have been an incredible thrill.
Music is, it's amazing. You can really, if you just believe, but the key is you stay humble and don't get tangled up by the musical police officers. In other words, if you like music, you like it. And as I see that Mommy What's a Funkadelic album cover on your wall, and the Ohio Players, and also other bands in the background, it's like those are classic bands that were all connected. It's that Ohio vibe. You know what I mean? A lot of stuff's a lot of grooves come out of Ohio. James Brown, his label was out of Cincinnati. The Players, I can go on and on, but as I got older and hooking up again back to Skip and Wood, Brass, and Steel guys, it was their hard work that they did to, playing in Small's Paradise, in New York City, doing the Chitlin circuit, hitting the road, being out with the Commodores, playing at the same clubs, and me being a young kid, hearing the stories and kind of like imagining what that was like. And then, this band comes to town and, Harold Sargent, the drummer, is like, oh, well, Bootsy's coming to town. Well, I know Catfish. Catfish and Harold were good friends, so let's go hang out with them. And so I was like a little kid, the Ohio Players are coming to town. Well, Stokes knows Satch. They're really tight, and Skip knows Junior or whatever. Let's go hang out with them. And those hangs would be hangs. It would take days to recover. It would be, it'd be a proper hang, but all that being said, it's a part of the scene. And I wasn't the architect. I was the recipient of, again, all that hard work that my elders did. And then as the table started to shift a little bit, because as I was a youngster and playing and listening to all the funk that was coming up at that time, and then the funk started to really the bass really started to come into your face. Larry Graham's putting out his solo product, Graham Central Station. So I got to meet Larry. And then then obviously Bootsy, and got to meet Bootsy, and those are two heroes, right? They're just Bootsy and Larry right there. Take up, that's, you can go back 10 years of all the funk that they did. Larry with Sly and Bootsy with George. I mean, with James. So each moment was a experience, a life-changing experience, and it was happening quick, you know. And so I was fortunate to be around the elders, and then early on, I met Sylvia Robinson. That's a whole other quadrant.
Who did that introduction? Was it Harold?
It was Harold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Harold and Joe Robinson had met at the Blue Morocco, you know, which was a club that Joe owned in the Bronx. And yeah, so I met Sylvia in 1974. We went down and met them. Well, they had already known them, and we got a band together, trying to shop around and seeing if we can get somebody to sign the band. And we had a few demos done, and Skip and Harold and Stokes had already did some work with George Kerr at All Platinum and Sylvia Robinson, and now I'm in the band, and Hubert Powell's with us, keyboard player, and we, let's see if we can get a record deal somewhere. And next thing you know, we're in New York City, 1650 Broadway, trying to see Johnny Brantley, an old, legendary producer, and then it's like, well, let's go see Joe. Next thing you know, boom, I'm over in 96 West Street in Englewood, New Jersey, and the rest is history. That was like 1974.
Funny side note is I bought the Pillow Talk single as a kid, Sylvia.
Wow.
I don't think my parents knew what was going on with that one, but
didn't know what was going on. It's an amazing person. Joe and Sylvia, what they did as Black entrepreneurs, and obviously with the challenges of being an independent record label. And I look back and it's like, they did their thing, and it was what I did at All Platinum that turned into Sugar Hill that became a part of my legacy.
Did you, at what point did you say, hey, this rap thing maybe is more than a fad?
It's kind of like it. Okay, there's a herd frequency that goes on when you're with a band, and a lot of bands tend to have their, we're a funk band and we like this and we don't like that, blah 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 blah. Because when I heard Rapper's Delight and that came out, I was like, oh, this is going to change everything. It didn't scare me. I wasn't like on this is a one-hit wonder vibe. No, because it had been bubbling around for a few years before. It wasn't, rap had been out since 1973, 74, really. And I'd been, but this is the first time I really came in contact with it because of Sylvia, and properly. But it didn't take long to see the result of a hit. And when we were, Skip and I were there with All Platinum, and there were hits that took place with the moments. Okay, there was some, Sylvia, Shame was a hit that they had, that was obviously pretty big prior. But we were there when Rapper's Delight blew up. And I could still see Joe Robinson's face smiling, and Sylvia going, Doug, they'll be writing in the history books about what's going on with this record. She said she nailed it. She was like a prophet. She knew. So when you're in that zone and you're seeing things, and back to the band, and some guys in the band might be, well, this will probably last about a couple of months maybe, and it'll be gone. It's going to be a fad. It didn't appear that way to me because it caught fire. And when something when something catches fire like that, it puts people in check. And that was the beauty of it all, because there's the naysayers, and the naysayers are coming to us, because Skip, Keith, and I were the ones that were, we were on the front line. We were the first ones, the first band to play, to back up, a massive, the first massive rap hit ever, and take it across the world. So our friends were like, "Oh, what's up, man? What's up with this rap stuff? Man, well, you guys are too good to be playing that music, aren't you? I know you don't think you're going to be able to do this for a while." So we took heat, and but we were eating, and that music took us, and that record took us all over the world, and took us to open up for George Clinton on the Knee Deep tour. But the point is, it's like, what did I think? I knew at that point that this wasn't going to go away, and it wasn't, it wasn't something that I critiqued, where, because if I started to critique the record, I could go, well, doesn't sound like blah 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 and this and that and the other. It doesn't matter. A record that's proper, it doesn't matter what it sounds like. It's just, period. When it connects, and that record is just changed everything. It just changed the whole. Look at the world now. It changed everything.
Yeah,
it changed the whole world.
Incredible.
Global.
Yeah. To set the record straight for all the viewers, so you played on the Message, White Lines, Apache, and Funk You Up, right?
Correct. We played for clarity. Okay. When the backstory is, when Rapper's Delight was to be recorded, Sylvia had called my house, my mom's house, looking for Skip and I. We to back it up a little bit, Wood Brass and Steel released a second record called Hard and Heavy. That album came out didn't come out. It kind of got caught up in the crossfire of the all platinum label going through some difficulties. At that point, when they had called my mom's house, some of my elders were like, "Don't bother to take the call. We're still pissed off from the fact of how we were treated from a record that was a good album that never came out." So people were a little disappointed. So then next thing we're at a place called Leo's Welfare Disco in New Haven, Connecticut, and I hear Rapper's Delight come on, and I heard 4 bars, and I'm with Keith, and I'm like, that's an all platinum record. Because I could tell by the sound of the studio, Motown sounds like Motowns and Stax. And so that's an all platinum record, because I spent 5 years recording in that studio. And then Sylvia called my house again, and Keith was really encouraged. He was really kind of like, "Hey man, call her back. Let's go down there. Let's go to the studio." Keith he hadn't really been in the recording studio before, so he was really gung ho. And so I called Sylvia back, and then Sylvia was like, "Doug, I got something hotter than hotcakes. I've been trying to find you, and you got to come down. Can you come down right now?" It was like Saturday night or something. So no, we'll come down. So we ended up going down, and the same day we ended up recording with the Sugar Hill Gang. It was like right in the studio, and this happened like super fast. So I did not play bass on Rapper's Delight. People mention that, and just tell the truth. Now it's questionable who did, because story has it that Chip Sheeran played bass on it. Then I talked to folks from Positive Force, and they told me that their bass player played on it. I don't know, but I do know I didn't play bass on that record. Set the record straight. But I played bass on every other song at Sugar Hill, all of them.
So on tracks like White Lines and things like that, did you work out those parts yourself, or were they written for you, or what?
No, well, most every song we did, primarily, except for some of the ones that the band brought in that were original, there were covers of other songs. White Lines is a liquid groove, Caravan. So, but what would happen is while we were in the studio, Jigs Chase, the arranger, would arrange a song that, and kind of like, and what would happen is most of the arrangements and he would write out the bass part, write out Keith's drum patterns, and then I was given the freedom to kind of embellish what was happening. So a song like White Lines is a perfect example. Main bass line is as is, like the main record, just kind of, Reggie Griffith put that together. And I just played the bass line, added a little flavor to it, but not, I'm playing what I'm playing the song, but adding just a little different, maybe a different kind of rhythm to it. Not much, just a little twist. But then when it came to the bridge, there would be riffs that I would throw into the bridge, just licks, natural licks. You're playing and you start doing a few different things. And it became kind of like a thing for the arrangers to listen to some of the bass licks that I did and arrange horn parts to it, or arrange a certain other kind of like, just embellish what I'm doing and write something around that. So, and that's what took place with White Lines. It was a couple of licks that I did, and on some of the versions, because there's different versions of these songs, like 7-inch and the 12-inch, and you might see 2 or 3 different versions. So on some, you might discover some that have like you'll hear the horns playing a bass run that I do or something like that. And you'll hear that on other songs, Sequence and West Street Mob, Sugar Hill Gang, a lot of songs, that became a thing. So, but parts were written out. Jigs Chase was the arranger. A lot of times it would be the drum part, bass line, just the theme of it, and Skip's guitar part. Keith and I would go down first. A lot of times we would play together, Skip, Keith, and I, to get the drums down. And then when the drums are recorded, I put the bass down again, and then Skip. So there was a system. And mind you, I'm 5 years in at all platinum recording with Skip and Wood, Brass, and Steel, and also a session musician backing up Etta James, Solomon Burke, Chuck Jackson, Sylvia, Brother to Brother, The Moments, and other artists like that. So by the time Sugar Hill came around, I had a, that's what I did. I was playing live, but I was playing in the studio from quite young. So I kind of had knew how the shape of the notes in a sense, and also how to relax when you're playing, and also be freaking aggressive, be what's needed for the job. If I got to be on the front burner, I'm on the front burner. If you need me to be on the back burner, I'll stay on the back burner and just burn, and sizzle a little bit. So recording is a whole different vibe. Keith and Skip were able to usher Keith in. Skip and I were able to give Keith a sensibility of the recording techniques, but Keith was a natural. Keith was so steady and listened and didn't want to fail, kind of like attitude. Got to remember, when you're in the studio, there's always 2 or 3 people ready to take your job. They're waiting, and a lot of times you just talk yourself out of it. It just kind of like you get to these things you might say where the producer's like, I don't want to be around that person, or whatever. So you have to find ways how to sometimes just, be invisible, but also when it's time to play. Keith was that person that always adapted quite quickly, very steady, and locked right in with Skip and I. So it didn't take long. It just took a couple of recordings, and it was like, boom. So yeah, we did a lot of songs. Started out, and I look back, and it's like, it's a lot of recordings that we did at Sugar Hill. A lot of classic songs. Jigs did a great job. The band did a great job. We were helping to write those songs. We were the unsung heroes that was adding music to these songs and adding different parts and also arranging as well, to be honest.
I think subsequently, in recent years, you guys have been getting your due for all that great work, and it's high time. But you touched on it, Doug, the chemistry between you and Skip and Keith, and that carried forward to Tackhead and other projects, and still thrives to this day. You talked about the connection you had with Skip, but as the three of you, what do you think it is that makes you guys just coalesce and click like you do?
Well, when you're playing live, right, and you're living with each other, you're around each other all the time. It's like any sports team. The more you play, the more you rehearse, the more you practice, you get good. You understand everybody's move. You help each other, do the best you can to play better. But the root of it really, again, is Skip, because Skip was able to set that to open the frequency up. He was always kind of laying the groove in and gave me the frequency to do what I wanted to do, and never was like, no, or he's not the kind of person that was like that unless it was needed, unless something was going on, we go, no, that's not right. That's inharmonically wrong. Try this. And then calmly. So the fact that when we met Keith, we only met Keith a month before, maybe before we went to All Platinum. To Sugar Hill. We met Keith in July of 1979, and we were at Sugar Hill in September. So we met Keith and did some rehearsals, did a couple of shows, and then it was just like boom. So when we went, and that boom happened, we went to Sugar Hill, and from that point it was nonstop. It was recording on the road for a couple of years straight. It was nonstop. So when we weren't on the road, we're in the studio. And when we're not in the studio, we're together writing our own material. So we didn't get lazy, and we were driven to continue to do our job, play the music, but also we had something to say as well. And we didn't get tangled up in certain things. And also success. Success was, what is success? Success is kind of like understanding and being at peace with what you have. And what we had was love for each other. And that's priceless. And at the same time, we weren't hit off. We didn't have a hit for the band or anything like that. There was a lot of things that took place where we sacrificed things that we did for other folks. We were taken advantage of certain things, but we managed to survive those things. And how do we deal with it? By continuing to make music, by continuing to play the best we could. So whatever anybody heard us, they were like, I like what I'm hearing. And eventually, maybe that led to, hey, would you guys like to be a part of working with me as a producer or with this artist or whatever? So we just stayed humble. We stayed humble, and what that did was it brought people to us, and we didn't push people away. So, but we also had to answer, hey man, damn, I heard all these records you're on, man. Guys must be making a lot of money doing this. I know that's your groove, Skip or Doug or whatever. Things, look, the record business is what it is. But what we did, we took that energy and downtime, we're writing material for our own stuff. We never stopped, never. And it paid off.
Did you feel, Doug, like you were sort of leading a little bit of a dual musical life in that, you're doing real cutting edge experimental stuff with like Adrian and Tackhead and that kind of thing. And then you were doing the other, studio jobs with other more mainstream type performers?
Well, there was these different kind of like periods. It's kind of like for me and Skip, it's the all platinum period. I got to break it down like this. And there was that struggle of dealing with that. But then again, Wood, Brass, and Steel came out of that. Was it a struggle? No, it was the beauty of us to be able to release this music with all platinum that is still great to this day. So there's that 5-year period. Then there's the Sugar Hill period, which gave us a way to see the world, backing up the Sugar Hill Gang, but also being in the studio with the Funky 4+1, Sequence, Crash Crew, Treacherous 3, Spoonie G, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, and doing all of those, and also with Sylvia Robinson and Candy Staten and other artists that were on the peripheral. So there was that gave us a sense of just nonstop live and recording. By the time we got to Adrian, there was the passage at Tommy Boy Records, the recording that we did with Afrika Bambaataa and James Brown. There's the recording we did with the Force MDs. Now we're away from all platinum, and we're in a sort of producer writer actually getting credit for certain songs vibe, and then that led us into Adrian Sherwood. By the time we got to Adrian, it was like this collision of this rhythm section with this dub mixer with Mark Stewart on the peripheral checking everything out from Mark Stewart, from the pop group. This English American kind of like funk punk collision that was going on. So by the time we got to London, it was like, that was success to us. Everything was successful. But from the time we got in London, we were in a studio recording our own stuff. Adrian has his own label. All these things are lined up. Everything is still underground, but it's freedom. So when we hit Heathrow, it was, our first recordings with Adrian, it was like, oh no, this is what the struggle was all about. This is what it was all about, to get here, to be able to be in an environment that's free and you can experiment and do things. Couldn't do that in America. America's a little bit different. I understand why Jimmy went to England, because of it's just a different setup there. So
especially in the 80s at that time.
Yeah, but it was you could really get some things done, and we did. So it was like 10 years of hard labor, in different lanes. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you were in Sing Sing, kind of like Rikers Island, hard labor. But it was, and I don't mean to be negative of anything we did. We did some great stuff, but all those things we did. That was our basic training in the ghetto. All that stuff that we did for those 10 years, all platinum, Sugar Hill was we were ninjas by the time. Keith, Skip, and I were friggin', Navy SEALs by the time we went to England. I mean, we were cutting with everything. So now we got that happening, and we also got all the stuff that was starting to, we go to England, and then all of our mates that were like, oh, you guys, hey, come to New York City. Little Steve and Arthur Baker start recording with all these other artists over in New York that we didn't record with before. And I think that was really the Sun City project that broke us out. But 84 was an explosion for us, 1984. That was a major explosion. And from that point forward is when a sense of independence really kicked in for Keith, Skip, and I, in my opinion, because, start our own label. Everybody's doing their own thing. I'm working with Jeff Beck. Keith's working with ABC and Ministry and doing Trent Reznor's first record, Pretty Hate Machine with TVT, and Skip's doing working with Peter Wolf and this one and that one. So we were just expanding, but always together. And then Tackhead was formed, and Fats Comet. So we had all these different things that were just kind of like that we could actually do without having anybody say no and put a wrinkle in it. The only people that can make stuff happen was us getting in our own way. The end. That was it.
When you guys were throwing everything against the wall, was there anything that was off limits, or you were just like, hey, we'll try anything?
It's like nothing really is off limits. You know, what we found a way to watch body language. There's things that Adrian liked. There's things that he didn't like. There's things we like that may, or we didn't like that maybe, he didn't like us. So there was this way mean to be able to read each other. But the only way you could do that was you record something and listen back to it. and you just, either it works or it doesn't, but it wasn't talked down. It was like, okay, here's an idea. We'll try it out. Do it. Go ahead, Keith, get the drum machine up. Adrian, do whatever you want to do. I'll play on top of it. There was no form. It was all like free. And we found a way how to conform to get this music out. And it's beautiful, because to this day we still have that special connection with the Adrian, Skip, Keith, myself, and Bernard. There's a special frequency that Tackhead has when we're together. Then there's this frequency when it's Skip, Keith, and I, and Mark Stewart. It's another vibe. Mark Stewart and the Mafia, whole different kind of, similar but different. And but so yeah, we throw stuff out there and just see what sticks, but didn't really care, because at the end of the day, if something didn't stick, Adrian could mash it up and put so much compression on it and dub it and edit it up. You wouldn't even know. It was like, well, I'll just use it for noise. Don't worry, it may not be a record, but I'll take this and I'll use this part just for the noise. We'll edit that in next song. So it was kind of like that.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.